In California, USA, as dawn broke, Kyle rushed out of his house to exercise. He ran hard on the street, venting his frustrations, hoping to alleviate the turmoil inside him through intense physical activity. But all of this was in vain. Kyle, like a trapped beast, leaped into the swimming pool. The scene of the accident resurfaced in his mind once again. He blamed himself for the accident. The sounds of the crash and the cries of anguish intertwined into an overwhelming heaviness that was hard to dissipate, guilt wrapping around him like a suffocating current. The sun gradually rose, its light dispelling the morning chill and waking Mia, ushering in a new day. She took her daily necessary medication and discussed her secret plan with her foster sister Becca. Meanwhile, her foster mother was completely unaware of Mia's intentions. About to turn 18, Mia had grown from an innocent child into a young woman on the brink of adulthood. Her foster mother, filled with emotions, planned to throw her a birthday party to celebrate. Mia knew her foster mother's arrangements would ultimately fall through, but she was unwilling to reveal her plans, instead lying that she was going to the library and asking her foster mother for some transportation money to save up as startup funds for her plan. Unlike the smiling Mia, Kyle was filled with sorrow. He locked himself in a dimly lit room, even ignoring the scholarship acceptance letter from the university. Kyle's state worried his parents greatly, prompting them to contact accident survivor Josh and ask him to invite Kyle out. Perhaps talking with a friend could help their son emerge from the shadows sooner. Kyle couldn't refuse his friend's invitation and prepared to drive to Josh's house. However, as soon as he sat in the driver's seat and heard the engine start, that familiar fear surged back, forcing him to abandon driving and ultimately choose to walk to Josh's house. Although Josh had survived the accident, he had paid a heavy price. Seeing Josh still bedridden for recovery made Kyle feel even worse. At that moment, Josh mentioned Noah's parents, who had been wanting to know the specifics of the accident since their dear friend Noah had tragically lost his life in it. However, under the dual pressure of physical and psychological strain, Kyle had lost large segments of his memory, only knowing that he had been the one driving that caused the accident. Seeing this, Josh shook his head, claiming he had forgotten all the details. Kyle hadn't been sitting for long when Josh's mother interrupted their conversation, saying that the physical therapist was about to arrive and asked Kyle to step outside. Josh's mother's feelings toward Kyle were quite complex. She understood that she shouldn't blame all the faults on this child. But looking at the healthy Kyle, thinking of her disabled son and the lost Noah, Josh's mother felt a sense of injustice. Why was Kyle able to live unharmed? Why did her son have no hope of standing again? Her resentful gaze was like a sharp blade, deeply piercing Kyle's heart, causing him immense pain. Unable to bear the condemnation of his conscience and powerless to face others' accusations, Kyle went to a nearby park, standing alone at the edge of a cliff, wanting to end all this pain. Little did he know, his figure had already appeared in Mia's lens. Mia recalled the car accident that made the news, recognized this familiar face, and immediately understood what Kyle intended to do. Pretending to faint, she shouted for help, successfully attracting Kyle's attention. Worried that Mia might be in danger, Kyle hurriedly called for emergency assistance. At that moment, a lizard crawled onto Mia's arm, startling her into jumping up and exclaiming. Only then did Kyle realize that Mia was not seriously hurt. Listening to her incessant explanations, he felt a headache coming on, and the thoughts of ending his life were completely dispelled by Mia. However, Kyle believed he did not need the concern of a stranger and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, Mia was more enthusiastic than he imagined, directly taking his phone to note down her number, agreeing to keep in touch later. Kyle was unwilling to pay attention to this somewhat reckless girl, allowing her to finish everything, and then he returned home dejectedly. He cast aside his parents' concerned words, wanting only to immerse himself in his own world. Unfortunately, Mia would not give Kyle such an opportunity. She returned home, placed the money in an iron box, and recalled the travel plans she had made with her friends, all of which had turned to dust because of the accident. However, Kyle's appearance became a turning point for the plan. Was this destined by fate? Mia secretly made a decision. The next morning, while Kyle was still asleep, he heard an unexpected voice coming from the living room, instantly waking him from his bed. He hurriedly got dressed and rushed out of his bedroom, seeing Mia chatting happily with his mother, leaving his mind blank. Kyle couldn't understand why she was at his home and what her purpose was. It turned out that Mia had lied to Kyle's parents, claiming to be Kyle's friend, and arranged to travel to Spain together in 3 days. To reassure them, she even asked her foster sister to pretend to be her mother and spoke on the phone with Kyle's mother. Although they had never heard of their son having such a friend, Mia's cheerful and talkative nature still left a good impression on Kyle's parents. They believed this trip would be an opportunity for their son to emerge from the shadows. However, Kyle was completely unaware of Mia's arrangements. He pulled Mia aside and firmly refused to go on the trip. But Mia was determined, using the incident at the cliff to blackmail Kyle. If he didn't want to worry his parents, he had to accompany her on the trip. She also understood not to rush things. After all, there were still 3 days left, and Mia believed Kyle's parents would persuade him. Just as Mia expected, before going to bed, Kyle's father Connor pushed open the bedroom door and cautiously suggested the idea of a trip. He had witnessed the changes in his son after the accident, feeling the pain in his heart. Wallowing in sorrow was of no use. Life had to move on. Connor only hoped that his son, who once loved sports and life, could return to him. The pain and hope hidden in his words made it impossible for Kyle to refuse the passport and credit card being offered. After all, the real him had long since perished along with that car accident. So he might as well go, considering it a way to comfort his parents. Meanwhile, Mia was saying her final goodbye to Becca. Her close friend had once told Mia, "No matter what happens, no matter where one is, there will always be someone in this world who is grateful for her arrival." Today, Mia gifted this sentence to Becca, hoping her sister would not be sad because of her departure. In the end, Mia and Kyle boarded the flight to Spain. For this 10-day trip to Spain, Mia felt both anxious and excited. For her, this was not just a journey, but a precious opportunity to seek answers. In contrast to the talkative Mia, Kyle exuded an aura that pushed people away. He remained silent, his face written with resistance. Fortunately, Mia didn't mind. After all, the journey was long, and they would have chances to interact. After 13 hours of flying, the two finally arrived at their destination. She had made thorough preparations for this trip a year ago. The RV parked before them was one of those preparations. While Kyle was observing the RV, the owner issued a receipt. He mistakenly thought Kyle was Noah, who had originally booked the vehicle, and Mia could only force a smile. Noah could never go to Spain with her because of that accident, so the owner replaced the receipt that originally belonged to Noah with Kyle's name. Kyle did not know that Noah was acquainted with Mia. He only stared at the modified RV with disdain. Unexpectedly, Mia did not know how to drive, so Kyle reluctantly took the driver's seat, frowning as he drove toward the first attraction. However, influenced by the shadow of the accident, he could only drive slowly. To bridge the distance with Kyle, Mia took the initiative to break the silence as soon as she got in the car, constantly throwing out topics in an attempt to talk to him. But Kyle seemed to be deaf to her words, allowing Mia to talk endlessly while he remained silent, seemingly still blaming Mia for being willful and forcing him to go on this trip. Mia could only pick up her camera to capture the scenery along the way, but she never gave up on communicating with Kyle. Seeing that he showed no curiosity about her continuous photography, Mia took the initiative to explain that she was collecting material for an album called Deadline. The so-called deadline is a metaphor, symbolizing a moment of conclusion. Even after reaching this point, Kyle still ignored her, and Mia had no choice but to end the topic and prepare to find a place to eat. She planned to turn at the next intersection, but Kyle seemed lost in thought, driving straight ahead. Mia had to reach out and turn the steering wheel, causing the car to lurch, and Kyle finally snapped back to reality, pulling over urgently by the roadside. Mia's actions completely angered him. Traffic safety was no joke. Kyle had also had enough of her noise and immediately scolded her sharply. In the end, Mia walked into the restaurant alone and forlorn, took out 2 lunch boxes, and additionally ordered a small cake. Kyle entered the restaurant and saw Mia sitting alone at a table, silently crying over the shabby birthday cake. Her back looked particularly lonely in the bustling crowd. Suddenly, regret welled up in Kyle's heart. He regretted being so harsh just now, and the hand that wiped away her tears made him realize that the usually lively Mia was hiding an unknown sadness. So, Kyle changed his previous indifference, and when they set off again, he was the first to actively ask Mia why she planned this trip. Only then did Mia tell Kyle that she came to Spain to find her mother. She had never seen her mother, and that day happened to be her birthday. How wonderful it would be to see her mother on her birthday. After nearly 2 years of investigation, Mia listed 10 candidates for her mother, the first of whom lived in Segovia. Kyle instantly perked up because Segovia was less than 6 kilometers away. This made Mia tense up immediately. She hurried to the back of the car and changed into a beautifully prepared shirt. Perhaps it was the homesickness that made her feel this way. Even though the sun was high in the sky, Mia felt it was already late. She worried about disturbing her mother's rest and insisted that Kyle stop the car at the designated campsite, preparing to visit the next morning. As night fell completely, Mia fell into a deep sleep after a day of running around. Kyle quietly placed the food on her bedside and was about to leave when he was attracted by a thick ledger. He couldn't help but open the cover. Inside were various photos, as well as many topics Mia had prepared for meeting her mother, filled with Mia's expectations and longings for her mother. The genuine emotions expressed within touched Kyle's heartstrings. Looking at the sleeping Mia, he understood that this girl was just a child missing her mother, and a sense of pity arose in his heart. The next morning, Mia woke up from her sleep, took her medication as usual, but found that Kyle was no longer at the campsite. A wave of panic surged in her heart, and Mia hurriedly searched around. At that moment, Kyle appeared behind her, carrying luggage and breakfast. It turned out that he had gone outside to get his luggage and change clothes to avoid waking Mia, which had led to a misunderstanding. Mia saw that Kyle had not abandoned her, and after a moment of panic, she immediately smiled with joy and happily embraced Kyle. Little did they know that this journey was full of surprises and uncertainties. Originally planning to meet her mother dressed in a carefully prepared shirt, looking radiant, Mia got her collar dirty when Kyle drove over a small pothole, splashing hot chocolate on one side of her outfit. But with limited funds, she couldn't afford new clothes. Seeing Mia's anxiousness, Kyle thought it was just a minor issue. Coincidentally, it was her birthday yesterday, and since he hadn't prepared a gift, Kyle drove into the small town, intending to buy Mia a few new clothes. While Kyle was shopping for clothes, Mia noticed a sketchbook in his luggage. She opened the book, and every stroke that met her eyes poured out the pain of the artwork's creator. The world constructed in black and white was filled with gloom and oppression. Mia recognized that this was a depiction of a car accident scene, and she couldn't help but feel a jolt in her heart. Not wanting to recall the painful incident, she picked up her camera and went out to the street to capture the beauty around her. Blue skies and white clouds, sunshine and tourists. The mottled stone bricks etched the history of the town. Mia captured all of this in her lens. Before long, Kyle came back carrying a big bag of clothes. He wasn't sure about Mia's style, so he bought a variety of clothing. Kyle's thoughtfulness moved Mia greatly, and she didn't want to disappoint him. She got into the car and changed into a new outfit. The pink and white striped short-sleeve shirt paired with pure white shorts made the beautiful Mia radiate energy under the sun, causing Kyle to momentarily be unable to look away. However, the road to finding her mother was not smooth sailing. Although Mia was prepared for failure, when visiting each name on the list one by one, all she received were regretful looks and head shakes. Mia couldn't help but feel disappointed. 1, 2, 3. As the names crossed off the list increased, Mia's originally joyful mood gradually settled down. Fortunately, with Kyle accompanying her, not only was the scenery along the way more charming, but the anticipated sadness was also much gentler than she had imagined. As expected, the day's search for her family still yielded no results. Kyle sat on the steps, watching Mia's apologetic figure gradually becoming mesmerized. That delicate yellow figure complemented the ancient alley, becoming a beautiful sight. He no longer felt that this trip was a mistake. Instead, he believed it was a wonderful beginning. Facing his mother's concerned inquiries, Kyle no longer avoided them. He took a picture of Mia and actively shared it with his mother, then couldn't help but take a few more shots, wanting to freeze this moment forever. Mia keenly noticed Kyle's subtle action. The latter, like a child caught doing something wrong, hurriedly explained that it was just to share with his mother. Mia saw his shyness and teased him a bit before they both headed to a seaside restaurant for a meal. During the meal, Mia lied that the medication she took was just vitamins, so Kyle didn't probe further and instead voiced his doubts. Since Mia couldn't drive, why did she book a vehicle? Mia then explained that she originally planned to come to Spain with her best friend to search for her mother, but unfortunately, the friend couldn't come. As for how Mia obtained a list of potential mothers, it was because of her former foster brother, who not only found out through technical means that her mother was Spanish and had studied in California, but also located her birth certificate. The signature in the mother section made Mia determined to find all women with the same name in Spain. Fortunately, her mother's surname was unique, and there was no custom of changing surnames after marriage in Spain, which allowed Mia to narrow it down to 10 candidates. The pendant around her neck was the only item left by her mother, and she believed that with these clues, she would surely find her mother. Kyle couldn't help but be curious about how many foster brothers and sisters Mia had, only to be surprised when Mia said there were 24. Mia lived in the foster care system for 18 years, moving through 12 families, but never had a real home. Her current foster mother is kind-hearted and willing to take her in until college. Just then, the waiter brought the bill, and the two competed to pay. In the scuffle, Mia's planner fell to the ground. Kyle quickly got up to pick it up, but unexpectedly, a photo slipped out from the planner. The familiar face in the photo made him instantly understand everything. The best friend Mia mentioned, who was supposed to travel together, was Noah, who died in the car accident. But why had Mia never mentioned this? Seeing Kyle's angry and confused expression, Mia hurriedly explained. That car accident was an indelible pain for both of them. She didn't want Kyle to take extreme actions because of it, which is why she saved him at the cliff and took him on this trip. Mia believed that only by empathizing could they redeem each other. She sat down next to Kyle, reminiscing about Noah together. With a longing for her dear friend, Kyle forgave Mia for her concealment, and the two reconciled. They hit the road again, but not far along, they were stopped by the police. Kyle was pulled over for driving too slowly, which severely affected road traffic. Receiving a warning from the traffic police, Kyle was quite frustrated, while Mia couldn't help but laugh. This finally eased the tension on Kyle's face. The two eventually drove to a beach. The afterglow of the sunset cast a brilliant light on the sea, like the planet Venus in the universe, dazzling and magnificent. Mia couldn't resist the temptation of the ocean and pulled Kyle to play in the water. The splashing water soaked their clothes and warmed their hearts. Their heartbeats grew more rapid, and their gazes were filled with each other. Hearing that there would be a meteor shower tonight, the tired Mia and Kyle sat on the beach, quietly gazing at the night sky. Mia talked about Venus and the paradise in her dreams. There is no war or hunger on Venus. Families live together in harmony and happiness. She originally wanted to say that there would be no more separations in the world, but Kyle took over the conversation, believing that a world without death is the true paradise. Mia knew he was still troubled by the car accident, so she advised him to let go of his obsession. After all, it was just an accident, and no one should bear such a heavy burden of guilt. Heaven allowed Kyle to survive unscathed, marking a new turning point in his life. Kyle should not waste this opportunity by giving up. His future holds infinite possibilities to change the world. But thinking of the late Noah and the paralyzed Josh, Kyle still couldn't let go. His sadness made Mia's heart ache. Mia repeated Noah's words. In this world, there will always be someone, somewhere, who is grateful for your arrival. She only hoped that Kyle could regain his spirits for those beautiful moments and for those who love him. Mia's words were like a beam of light, dispelling the gloom in Kyle's heart. He felt the warmth in his arms, and his once cold heart was rejuvenated. However, accidents always come unexpectedly. Just as the atmosphere became increasingly ambiguous, Mia suddenly fainted, and Kyle hurriedly took her to the hospital. During the wait, Kyle's hands trembled uncontrollably. He could no longer bear the unexpected incidents involving those around him. Fortunately, 2 hours later, Mia walked out of the emergency room safely. Kyle rushed over to ask what happened. Mia then explained that she had a congenital heart defect and had only shown symptoms that day because she forgot to take her medication. Mia thought Kyle would leave because of this, but to her surprise, he was even more determined to stay. He promised that he would accompany Mia well from then on. The next day, the two went out on the street again. Mia's frequent disconnection of calls finally aroused Kyle's suspicion. She had no choice but to confess that she had run away from home. Her adoptive mother had contacted the hospital and would arrange for her surgery this week. But the success rate of the surgery was only 50%. Mia did not want to leave this world without seeing her mother. She was not afraid of death, but feared leaving without having accomplished anything. Mia believed that if her birth did not change the world or influence others, her life would be meaningless. But to reassure Kyle, Mia lied that the doctor said her trip was absolutely safe, and only then would Kyle continue to accompany her in searching for her family. After visiting one by one, only the last candidate remained on the list. Without a doubt, that must be Mia's biological mother. Kyle looked at the town before him, knowing the journey was about to reach its end, wanting to express the feelings he had been brewing for a long time. But Mia interrupted him just in time. She was not aware of what the unfinished words contained. She just wanted to quietly enjoy the happiness and joy of reaching the peak of the moment. Yet her wish fell short once again. Despite the fact that the woman had the same blonde hair as Mia and had studied abroad, when Mia learned that she had returned from studying in New York, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Because her mother had studied in California, all candidates had been confirmed, and not a single one was her mother. The speed at which she fell from the peak of hope was too fast, leaving Mia in a daze. At this moment, she just wanted to be alone in silence. Kyle searched everywhere for Mia, who was hiding he didn't know where, but fortunately found her by the seaside. The tears sparkling in Mia's eyes were particularly dazzling in the sunlight. That tearful smile made Kyle's heart ache. Regardless of the result of the search for her mother, the journey was nearing its end. To ensure Mia had a good last night, Kyle decided to stay at a hotel that night. Coincidentally, it was the peak travel season, and there was only one room left with a big bed. Kyle did not change it and checked in with Mia. As soon as they entered the room, the warm decorations and exquisite layout made Mia, who had been living in a camper, unable to help but cheer. Hearing her admiration, Kyle finally relaxed his long-held anxious heart. It seemed that Mia had come to terms with the regret of not finding her mother. Her positive and optimistic attitude towards life also infected Kyle. He felt that his broken heart was gradually healing under the light emitted by Mia. At dinner time, Kyle mentioned the follow-up arrangements. He planned to have Mia taste the local specialty dinner when they returned the next day. Unexpectedly, Mia's expression darkened. She had not yet found her mother and absolutely would not go back. Kyle immediately became anxious upon hearing this. Heart disease was no small matter, and he understood the importance of this surgery. Mia could not give up the hope of survival for a mother who had cruelly abandoned her, nor could she abandon those who truly cared for and loved her. But searching for her mother had become Mia's obsession. Her heart had a deadline, and she did not know when it would come to an end. So her lifelong wish was to stand in front of her mother and ask why she abandoned her back then and whether she had missed her over the years. Mia's stubbornness made Kyle furious. He did not know how to persuade Mia to change her mind, and ultimately left angrily, leaving Mia alone to stare blankly at the empty restaurant. After Kyle left, Mia opened her sketchbook and found that Kyle's drawings were no longer large areas of black, but recorded the night they watched the meteor shower by the seaside with gentle strokes. She had seen Kyle's change. And he was right. She could not just abandon those who loved her deeply. So Mia found Kyle and promised him that she would search for 3 more days. And if there was still no result, she would immediately return home for the surgery. If something unexpected happened during that time, they would meet again on Venus. That was Mia's paradise, a dream home far away from all troubles. However, hard work pays off for those who are determined, and the situation took a turn the next day. Kyle discovered that perhaps they had mistaken the identity. The signature on the birth certificate, the letter A should actually be O. So he searched with this new name and found the only woman using this name in a small town. The iconic building of this town was exactly the same as the pattern on Mia's necklace. Various details corroborated each other, and Mia had a premonition that this woman was her biological mother. Without delay, the two immediately drove to their destination. With 2 hours left to drive, Kyle advised Mia to rest for a moment. Not long after driving, he saw a unique scenery by the roadside and wanted to wake Mia to take a picture. But no matter how Kyle called out, Mia showed no response. A wave of panic instantly engulfed Kyle. Thus, The vehicle that was supposed to head towards their reunion had to turn around and head to the hospital. However, Mia's condition was already very critical, and the doctor issued a final warning. Surgery must be arranged as soon as possible. Kyle wanted to look for Mia's ID in her bag to handle the procedures, but he found a one-way ticket inside the bag. It turned out that Mia had never thought about going back. Then how should everything between them be explained? Kyle couldn't help but question Mia. Did she really have to abandon everything for a woman she had never met? Kyle rushed out of the hospital, only to encounter a patient being brought in by emergency services at the door. The sight of the patient covered in blood stimulated his brain, and the truth about the car accident finally became clear. Kyle remembered that it was Josh, sitting in the passenger seat, who insisted on showing him a video, and that he had caused the accident while trying to avoid a motorcycle. Kyle immediately dialed Josh's number, not to blame him, but to say it was okay. The heavy shackles he had carried for so long were completely lifted with their mutual understanding. Kyle suddenly realized, what could be more important than cherishing the present? He returned to the hospital room and tightly held Mia's hand. No matter what the future holds, no matter the outcome, Kyle respected Mia's choice because he only wanted to walk with Mia all the way. Kyle took Mia to avoid the medical staff and returned to the unfinished mountain road. They finally stopped in front of a small house. Mia nervously pressed the doorbell, and after explaining her purpose, the book in the woman's hand instantly fell. This mother and daughter, separated for a long time, finally reunited at this moment. Mia fulfilled her wish and left with Kyle, feeling satisfied. But soon, a wave of panic quietly surged in her heart. Before knowing Kyle, Mia had never feared death. But this time, she began to fear that her life was running out. Because Mia had not yet been able to go further with Kyle, she was reluctant to leave, unwilling to part with the happiness within reach. Mia gazed deeply at Kyle, wanting to engrave her lover's image in her heart. Suddenly, a sharp pain radiated from her heart, and she could no longer support her body, collapsing to the ground. Why does happiness always come to an abrupt end at the most beautiful moments? But Kyle still has a long life ahead, wanting to spend it with Mia. He does not believe that fate could be so cruel. Kyle stood outside the operating room, constantly praying for divine mercy. Fortunately, heaven favored this couple. This trip to Spain not only helped Kyle regain hope in life, but also brought him his lifelong love. After returning home, Kyle immediately began preparing for the next 2-week trip to Boston. He excitedly said goodbye to his parents, opened the car door, and sat in the passenger seat, giving Mia, who was in the driver's seat, a tender smile. Mia once thought the trip to Spain was about chasing the past, but unexpectedly, it was about finding her future. Venus was no longer an ideal land in her mind, but a person, someone worth fighting and striving for. Mia tightened her grip on the steering wheel and gazed into the distance. An endless road slowly unfolded before her,